Hi everyone, welcome to the agenda for the second day of the Data and Innovation Summit 2020. My name is Henrik Göthberg. I'm the founder of Dairdux and I'm the chairman of this conference. In this opening of the second day, I would like to continue on from what we talked about in the opening keynote yesterday. What it means to work on becoming data and AI ready. And also what you can see in some of the technology and practice sessions that we share with Dairdux and the Airplane Alliance. But here, let's talk about what it means to build a data and AI ready engine in practice. So what I do, I'm working as an interim manager for more than a year now with Scania Financial Services. And they have a very exciting journey moving into becoming data and AI ready. And the whole reason I joined to work with Scania was that I felt that they truly understood their principles and our core values and ideas really match. Especially with the boss I'm working with now. A shout out to Helena Hörnebrandt, who is head of operations for Scania Financial Services. So here we have their principles in practice, the way we interpret it in Scania, how to become data and AI ready. And you will see now that you always need to find the right context. You need to find the right lingo, how it fits in your own organization. So it's not exactly the same, but if you look at it, it is the same. So here it is. I will give you a short background on how the situation and the journey and the business vision for Scania Financial Services. What is our operational vision with the Dairdux Engine? And then I want to highlight some key enablers, what we really think has proven important in this specific context. So let me start. So the real why, what is driving and forcing Scania Financial Services, who then essentially is working with loan, leasing and insurance around fleets of trucks. Scania, of course, as the truck manufacturer. Now, there's a lot of things happening driving this map. External forces of how fintech is developing. There are many mega trends who's really impacting our lives. The regulatory space in the finance sector is quite strongly changing as well. And then of course we are part of Scania, who is essentially in the journey of pivoting from being a truck manufacturing to find its place and position in a transport ecosystem. So our fundamental strategies in Scania also has an impact of why we need to sort of do things differently. Now, what is it that we really need to do differently? So in a nutshell, Scania Financial Services is coming from a very entrepreneurial approach, where we basically now need to balance this entrepreneurial approach with more platform-oriented thinking. So to some degree, we need to reduce complexity, we need to reduce a scattered IT and data landscape and try to understand how this will work in a platform-oriented way on a global scale. And the way we are driving this journey is really based on three core focus areas. So one dimension is how we are working with our core engine. One is how we work with data-driven and smarter decisions, and one is how we explore and drive innovation. This, together with new ways of working and a new governance, is what we think is the fundamental engine that will take us to the long-term approach that we want to have. The way this journey is going about is literally three major phases. So it has been a sort of set the direction and foundation phase that started already in 2018. I joined in 2019, and now we're in the middle of stabilizing the Dairdux engine. So basically moving away from project-centered ways of driving change to setting up this operating model where truly development and operations is managed as one, as a continuous evolution. And then when this phase has gone the whole way, when we've sort of come to the core facets of key things in place, it's about utilizing this approach, what we have learned, our structural capital, our technology setups, and simply accelerate with what we have and improve on what we have. But right now we're still putting things in place. We're in the middle part. Now, the way we see these investments in our three key focus areas is one key area we call the engine is essentially to create the bread and butter ways of working and applications that becomes the real engine, which is the core loaning leasing type systems. But it's essentially not only an engine for the bread and butter core processes, but it's essentially the engine of quality data. The second focus area is how we now take care of all the things that needs to go outside of this engine in order to make it smart. So how do we drive analytics and algorithms into it? And how in some ways do we also drive to fix our legacy? So we have all these small applications running, supporting the major core applications. So how do we move them into a platform thinking? Now the third level of this, of course, investment is to also set up a platform-oriented approach where we have our sandbox, how we can explore and very much more rapidly test the market and test new services and new ways of reaching the market. So you can sort of see that we are investing heavily to get the basics right. We are continuously investing in smartness, and we are gearing up the investment in innovation when the focus area 1 and 2 has come to a critical tipping point. Now, our engine in a nutshell, yeah. So what is the Dairdux Engine that we have looked at? So it has some key components, and of course they're all addressing our fundamental strategies and vision. But in a nutshell, the first idea is that we are truly driven out of our customer journey. So the customer journey is truly agnostic. Doesn't matter of technology and data. We truly want to understand how to best serve the customer, and the customer journey is driving our user journeys. So this is sort of setting an agnostic way of how we feel about this. This is the CX strategy and our UX strategy. Now, this is a key component. Another key component is how we are thinking around community and how we are thinking around hub and spoke. So hub and spoke for us means we need to find a way how to balance the local approach that has made us extremely successful in a global market where we are a quite unique type of bank and insurance company existing in more than 50 different markets. How do we have this entrepreneurial drive and this decentralized close to the customer approach working, and at the same time reaping the benefits of a platform of common data synergies? So here we are truly trying to dig into on a very operational level what it means, what the role of head office is all about, what the role of our regional offices is all about versus the local markets. And in a nutshell, we don't think we can drive this journey, pushing it from centrally out to the local markets. We try to create the reverse. How can we create a pool where we get best practices happening in one market to cross-pollinate to another market, and where we then are there from the head office to facilitate and orchestrate that the community is sort of latching on best practices. Other key areas here is the fundamental Dairdux lifecycle engine. You see that in my slide down on the right hand bottom. So here we truly have understood how do we define the key phases of a use case lifecycle, and how do we orchestrate some of the core dimensions that makes this intersectional. The customer dimension, the business value capture dimension, how we change business process, how we adopt things within the business community, and then what's the technology and what's the data around this. So here is our take on what's the Dairdux Engine lifecycle. And then community is a key part I will come back to. And then what you see, we have also identified that there are several things where we need to have cross-functional end-to-end capabilities. So if you want to drive a platform, the technology and design patterns, we need to find a way to build community around. How we do data and data management, data governance. How we look at business and solution ownership, product ownership. So we are trying to set up some core capabilities that becomes our framework and our ways of working, that in a way allows us to be completely flexible on what to focus on and what to do, but we are trying to drive a framework so the way we are doing things becomes easy to harvest and reuse in another market. So this is sort of the core components of the engine. Now, what I would like to highlight the last couple of minutes now is some key ideas that for us has been very, very important to address and as part of this engine on more operational level. So if you remember and if you reflect on what I said in the keynote from yesterday, the journey is really about setting up the frame and then not only building use cases that iteratively more and more, but at the same time harvesting structural capital. And with structural capital, I mean how we do our processes. And processes goes all the way from business processes all the way to data ops type processes. So a lot of things here, we are sort of having a big vision of where we want to go, but through the use cases that we are driving, we are stepwise stabilizing our view on these different areas. So some key enablers where we need to stabilize and where we're working on are these four ones. And I will jump into them one by one now. So the first one I want to talk about is the core topic around modularization. And I think this is one of the key differences for IT and for the traditional technology stack. How should we as an enterprise going about understanding our technology landscape? You know, from ERP applications to CRM applications, building monoliths, on the one corner, to going to AWS Cloud or Cloudera on-prem and platform. How will all this fit together? And the key strategy we are talking about is that in all ideas, the fundamental idea is modularization. And of course, being part of Scania, modularization is very close to heart and very close to the lean concepts of Scania. Scania is world-class in how to modularize the build of a truck. And in this way, being able to autonomously work with different parts of truck manufacturing, who builds the engine, who builds the gearbox, who builds the chassis, and at the same time knowing that in the end it fits together. Modularization is a way to deal with complexity, and it also allows us to make choices. Where do we want to develop things ourselves? Where do we want to buy stuff? But this modularization, it goes further than that. It's not only an application level, it's also how we treat data, how we treat our algos or algorithms, and how we treat code. So how can we treat it as assets, infrastructure as code, containerized algorithms and data, so it actually becomes Lego pieces that we can reuse. And driving this dimension of modularization also drives a lot around, how do we in the communities help each other out to reuse these modules in a smart way. Another key topic of this modularization then becomes sort of how to look at the whole architectural landscape. So we're also talking a lot about how do we look at our legacy systems, how do we decouple data management and using best technologies for data handling versus application layers or analytical layers. And then ultimately, how do we drive this towards a UX layer where ultimately from a user perspective or a customer perspective, they shouldn't need to feel the pain of flipping through many different applications. We should be able to create one user interface for one key role or one customer interface. So technology-wise, this is the key topics how we want to solve this. Now, second key idea I want to highlight here is, as an enabler, how to build a learning organization. So as you can see here, the trick here is to have your use case life cycle on the one hand, to work on sort of finding a common lingo. So we have business solution owners who knows the process they're in, working together with data engineers, application developers, application integrators, or data scientists. So basically we understand as a cross-functional team, what do we need to do in the idea phase? What do we need to do in the validation phase? So this is a key topic now, that we build a common lingo like this. Now, to get this out across the globe, this is where community comes in. So the key trick here is basically to build communities both around the business people, so different business domains, like some guys are in sales, some guys and girls are in contract management. We have credit underwriting, credit management. So how can we basically harvest best practices in sales across the globe? How can we harvest best practices in credit automation as such as this? So the whole idea is then to closely connect the community as part of the harvesting process of what we have done with one use case. Now, another key topic here I want to highlight is that we have fundamentally also needed to shift our ideas how we understand investments. So imagine going from a sort of project waterfall traditional view of, this is your project investments, this is your sort of round spend, line management of your application landscape, this is your process innovation, this is your IT innovation. So here we are really going in separating a commercial view of a funnel, like of a portfolio of ideas that we want to take, and then based on those ideas we basically make prioritization on what to invest and fund and work on a development level. And the way this goes now is basically in a way that we basically have a way to have a venture cap lean startup kind of approach. So we can start many ideas in the idea phase, but we only bring the right ones moving forward. So the sort of business case and then run everything into production is gone. The whole piloting and see what we do is also gone. So everything has the potential to be part of our production setup, but we have ways of filtering out what we don't need to work on. So in this way, this becomes a much more agile steering of our investments. And it requires some different ideas on how to do bucket funding, how to do funding essentially that is relevant for agile and DevOps, so to speak. Another key area to work on has been for us, how do we truly understand business solution ownership? So when you're going now that you have an interdisciplinary team where you go from a business process and a domain owner in that all the way down to technology and data, one dimension of ownership. And then we have the other dimension of ownership, who owns the framework and ideas around a domain at head office, and who owns it out in the global market. So we have worked with a holistic understanding for product ownership or business ownership. So how we can look at, from a business perspective or P&L owner perspective, who is the owner at head office, who is the value capture owner in the local market, and who is the business solution owners, product owners on a more technology level that allows us to sort of work cross-functional. So product ownership or business ownership is a key topic. The last thing I want to highlight here is, of course, another key area has been around how we drive our decisions. To get real speed, we also had to work closely with understanding to where do we make decisions. What decisions do we make in the agile team? Where do we have our tactical forest which can make decisions on a weekly basis? And how do we drive our strategic decisions? So this the way we see it is really like cogs moving well together, and basically in order to get speed we need to work on different horizons with different types of questions. Now, as the last one, what this is all about, what this has been all about, has truly been around, we are doing something, we are onboarding one market at a time, we are onboarding one use case at a time, and then we are taking that into production and then into an improve phase. And then we are sort of building our journey in terms of more markets on the one end, but also on the other end, different use cases to cover. So we're expanding our footprint in terms of how we are drying out the old and moving into the new. So with this, thank you very much for listening to this. I hope this gave a couple of more insights on what a Dairdux engine could look in practice. So with this, more questions, feel free to ping me on LinkedIn or anything. Have a nice day. Thank you.